I Am Legend, released in 2007, is anchored by a relatively small but powerful ensemble, with a central focus on Will Smith, whose performance carries the emotional and narrative weight of the film. Will Smith, who plays Dr. Robert Neville, was already an internationally recognized actor by the time he took on this role. Smith's career began in the late 1980s as a rapper under the name The Fresh Prince, and he gained widespread fame with a television show, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which ran from 1990 to 1996. This show established Smith as a charismatic actor capable of blending humor, relatability, and depth, traits that would serve him well in his later film career. His transition from television to the big screen was marked by a series of successful blockbuster films in the late 1990s and early 2000s, including Independence Day, Men in Black, Ollie, I, Robot, and Hitch. Each of these roles showcased his versatility, ranging from action hero to dramatic lead to romantic protagonist. In I Am Legend, Smith brought a combination of gravitas, vulnerability, and physicality to the role of Dr. Neville, a scientist struggling with isolation in a post-apocalyptic world. His previous experience in both action-driven blockbusters and character-focused dramas allowed him to navigate the complex emotional landscape of the film, which required conveying profound loneliness, determination, and emotional fragility. The role also demanded extensive physical preparation, as Smith performed many stunts and carried much of the film's action sequences himself, including scenes of combat, survival, and evasion of hostile creatures. This physical commitment, combined with the emotional depth required, marked a significant achievement in Smith's career and demonstrated his capacity to lead a film almost single-handedly. Alice Braga, who plays Anna, is another central figure in the film. Braga was born in Brazil and began her acting career in Brazilian cinema, gaining attention for her work in films such as City of God and Lower City. Her transition to Hollywood roles showcased her ability to bring emotional intensity and nuanced performances to a global audience. In I Am Legend, Braga's character is a key emotional anchor and represents hope and human connection for Neville, contrasting sharply with the pervasive isolation he experiences. Braga's prior experience with emotionally charged roles allowed her to convey authenticity in her interactions with Smith's character, contributing to some of the most touching moments in the film. Her performance in I Am Legend helped introduce her to a broader audience and reinforced her reputation as a talented actress capable of performing in both action-driven and emotionally rich narratives. Willow Smith, the daughter of Will Smith, appears briefly as his daughter in flashbacks, though her role is limited in terms of screen time. Despite the brevity of her appearance, the inclusion of a family connection added an emotional dimension to Dr. Neville's character, grounding his motivations in love and loss. The presence of Willow Smith also subtly reinforced the film's themes of familial bonds and the stakes of survival in a world stripped of humanity. Other notable actors include Charlie Tahan, who plays Ethan, Anna's younger companion. Tahan was a young actor at the time, and this role provided him with an opportunity to gain exposure in a high-profile Hollywood production. Although his screen time is limited compared to Smith or Braga, his performance contributes to the narrative by highlighting the themes of trust, adaptation, and survival in a hostile environment. Tahan's experience on this film likely influenced his later career choices, which include appearances in both film and television projects where he often portrays complex, emotionally driven characters. In addition to the central cast, I Am Legend features a number of supporting actors and extras who portray the infected survivors and the hostile creatures that populate post-apocalyptic New York. These roles required actors to perform under challenging conditions, often wearing prosthetics or motion capture suits, and interacting with environments dominated by visual effects. While these performers are not as prominently recognized as the lead actors, their work is essential in creating the film's immersive, desolate atmosphere and conveying the tangible danger that Neville faces. The casting of I Am Legend was crucial to the film's success, as it relied heavily on the strength of its actors to maintain audience engagement in a story that is frequently focused on solitude and internal conflict. Will Smith's star power drew audiences, but it was his ability to convey deep emotional resonance combined with the complementary performances of Alice Braga and the younger actors that gave the film its human dimension. Each actor's previous experience informed their approach to the characters, while the film itself provided them with a platform to explore more psychologically complex and physically demanding roles than they had in prior projects. For Will Smith, I Am Legend became one of his most recognized solo performances, often cited as a highlight in his filmography for the way he carried a film almost entirely on his own. For Alice Braga, it was a stepping stone to more prominent Hollywood roles and wider international recognition. For the younger cast members, the film served as a high-profile introduction to major studio productions, giving them exposure and experience that would benefit their careers in the years to follow. Collectively, the cast's performances created a compelling and emotionally grounded story that balanced the fantastical elements of a post-apocalyptic world with the very human struggles of survival, loneliness, and hope. I Am Legend, released in 2007, had a significant impact on popular culture and the broader conversation surrounding post-apocalyptic narratives. Its portrayal of a desolate, abandoned New York City immediately captured the public imagination, influencing not only the way urban landscapes were depicted in films, but also how society envisioned the potential consequences of pandemics and widespread catastrophe. The film came out in a period when audiences were increasingly fascinated with dystopian and post-apocalyptic scenarios, following a decade of blockbuster franchises that explored survival in extreme circumstances, from zombie outbreaks to natural disasters. The stark, empty streets of Manhattan depicted in I Am Legend became an iconic visual reference, and the film contributed to a growing interest in imagining how cities would look and feel if humanity were removed from the equation. This visual motif of deserted urban centers has since been echoed in television, video games, and other media, inspiring creators to explore the haunting beauty and eerie silence of human absence. Culturally, the film resonated in the context of global health anxieties. Although it is a work of fiction, its story of a virus that wipes out humanity tapped into real-world fears about pandemics, biological threats, and the fragility of human civilization. In the years following the release, references to I Am Legend frequently appeared in discussions of viral outbreaks, emergency preparedness, and even urban planning. People drew parallels between the film's depiction of isolation and the challenges of surviving in a drastically changed world. Its narrative inadvertently became part of the cultural lexicon in conversations about global crises, serving as a lens through which audiences could explore fears and uncertainties about the future. The film also influenced popular culture in more lighthearted and visual ways. Images and clips of the empty streets of New York, with vines creeping over cars and buildings standing abandoned, became iconic and widely shared online. Memes and social media posts often reference these visuals to illustrate situations of extreme quiet or emptiness, or to exaggerate feelings of isolation, long before the global lockdowns of 2020 gave them renewed relevance. Its visual style of abandoned urban spaces entered the public imagination, shaping how apocalyptic scenarios were imagined in both serious and humorous contexts. Even in advertising and promotional materials for unrelated products, imagery reminiscent of the film has been used to evoke a sense of dramatic emptiness or survival against odds. From a historical perspective, I Am Legend also stands as a landmark in the genre of post-apocalyptic science fiction. While the story itself is an adaptation of Richard Matheson's 1954 novel, the 2007 film brought modern cinematic techniques and a blockbuster sensibility to the narrative. Its combination of high-quality visual effects, urban destruction, and an emotionally complex protagonist set a precedent for subsequent films and television series that explore similar themes. The film's impact is particularly evident in the way it inspired a renewed interest in narratives centered on lone survivors or small groups navigating a radically transformed world. Films and shows released after I Am Legend, including those in the zombie and viral outbreak subgenres, often draw upon its model of combining action, suspense, and psychological depth in exploring human survival. I Am Legend also contributed to broader discussions of isolation and resilience in popular media. Dr. Robert Neville's struggle with loneliness and the psychological consequences of being the last human alive resonated with audiences who had experienced or feared social isolation in various forms. The The film's emphasis on human connection, memory, and hope amidst adversity became culturally significant, influencing how stories about solitary survival were told and interpreted. The narrative highlighted the emotional cost of isolation as much as the physical dangers, emphasizing a more holistic understanding of survival. This human-centered approach to a catastrophic scenario has been cited as influencing both films and novels that followed, emphasizing character psychology alongside action-driven plots. The timing of the film's release also played a role in its historical significance. Released in the mid-2000s, the world was grappling with increasing concerns about terrorism, environmental disaster, and emerging global health threats. Audiences responded to I Am Legend not only as an action-packed science fiction story, but as a cultural mirror reflecting anxieties about security, disease, and societal collapse. The film, intentionally or not, engaged with these themes, allowing viewers to process real-world fears in a controlled narrative environment. Its depiction of a single man confronting the remnants of humanity became a symbolic exploration of resilience, resourcefulness, and moral responsibility in a world where societal structures have collapsed. In addition to inspiring media, memes, and artistic references, I Am Legend influenced fashion and design in subtle ways. The post-apocalyptic aesthetic, characterized by worn clothing, urban decay, and practical survival gear, entered mainstream visual culture, influencing photo shoots, music videos, and video game design. The depiction of overgrown, abandoned cities became a shorthand for desolation, survival, and the passage of time, appearing in a variety of cultural products beyond film. Its influence is particularly notable in video games, where the empty, dynamic city environment became a template for immersive post-apocalyptic worlds, providing players with both visual storytelling and interactive tension. Politically, while the film is not explicitly partisan or ideological, it stimulated discussions about preparedness, civil responsibility, and the role of science in protecting society. Dr. Neville's role as a scientist working tirelessly to find a cure underscored themes of human ingenuity and the moral imperative to act in the face of catastrophe. Educational programs, science discussions, and popular debates occasionally reference the film when exploring issues of virology, epidemiology, and the ethics of scientific research. While the influence may be indirect, I Am Legend contributed to a cultural environment where conversations about disease, research, and societal collapse were more vivid, visual, and accessible to a wide audience. Finally, the film's enduring presence in popular culture is reflected in its continued recognition years after its release. Its visual and narrative motifs remain familiar references for audiences, and it has been cited in lists of influential science fiction films of the early 21st century. Its combination of blockbuster spectacle and intimate emotional storytelling has cemented its status as a cultural touchstone, shaping perceptions of what a post-apocalyptic narrative can achieve both visually and thematically. In short, I Am Legend is more than a film about a lone survivor. It is a cultural artifact that influenced aesthetics, storytelling, social discourse, and the imagination of generations who encountered its vision of a world without humanity. The production of I Am Legend was a complex and ambitious undertaking, reflecting the scale and intensity of its post-apocalyptic narrative. From the outset, the filmmakers faced significant challenges in adapting Richard Matheson's novel into a modern cinematic experience that combined both visual spectacle and emotional depth. The film was directed by Francis Lawrence, who had previously worked on music videos and was in the early stages of establishing his feature film career. Lawrence brought a distinct visual sensibility and attention to detail that shaped the look and feel of the film, ensuring that the empty streets of New York were not only visually striking but emotionally resonant. His prior experience in music video direction allowed him to experiment with dramatic framing, lighting contrasts, and pacing in ways that would later become central to the film's tension and mood. Casting was a key component of the film's production. Will Smith was attached to the project early, and his involvement had a considerable impact on both the scale of the production and the narrative approach. Smith was deeply involved in character development, working closely with the director and writers to ensure that Dr. Neville's motivations, emotional state, and actions were authentic and compelling. His dedication extended to physical preparation, as he had to perform demanding stunts, navigate complex sets, and endure long hours on location. Smith also contributed to discussions about the film's emotional beats, particularly the depiction of isolation, grief, and the bond between Neville and his dog, Sam. The casting of Alice Braga as Anna required careful consideration to balance the dynamic between the central characters, bringing both vulnerability and resilience to the story. Braga's arrival on set introduced a collaborative dynamic that enriched the filming process, especially in scenes emphasizing trust, hope, and the reconstruction of human connection. Filming took place primarily in New York City, a choice that presented both opportunities and logistical challenges. The production aimed to depict a deserted urban landscape in a city that is almost always bustling with activity. To achieve this, filmmakers used a combination of location shooting, controlled street closures, and extensive visual effects. Some of the most memorable scenes, including empty Times Square and Madison Square Garden, required careful planning and coordination with city authorities. In addition, much of the city's usual activity was digitally removed in post-production to create the illusion of total abandonment. The attention to detail in set design and visual effects contributed to the film's credibility, making audiences believe that an entire metropolis could be depopulated while maintaining recognizable landmarks. One of the most challenging aspects of production was working with the creatures known as Darkseekers. These infected humans required sophisticated motion capture technology and prosthetics to appear convincing on screen. Actors performing as Darkseekers often wore motion capture suits with intricate facial markers, enabling animators to translate movements into realistic digital characters. This process demanded patience and precision from the performers, as well as close collaboration between the director, visual effects team, and stunt coordinators. The filmmakers faced numerous iterations to perfect the appearance and behavior of these creatures, aiming to balance menace with believability. In addition, practical effects such as prosthetics, makeup, and lighting were used to enhance realism and avoid the sense of digital artificiality that can undermine suspense in creature-driven narratives. Animal coordination was another crucial element of the production. Sam, Dr. Neville's dog, is central to the story both emotionally and narratively. The filmmakers worked with professional animal trainers to ensure that the dog's behavior was consistent, expressive, and safe for on-set filming. Scenes involving Sam were carefully choreographed to convey loyalty, intelligence, and companionship while adhering to rigorous safety protocols. The bond between Smith and the dog actor added authenticity to their relationship, creating moments of genuine emotional resonance that became some of the most memorable in the film. The screenplay and pre-production stages involved significant revisions to update the story for a modern audience. While the core premise of a lone survivor navigating a post-apocalyptic world remained, the filmmakers introduced new elements, including the portrayal of the virus, the nature of the Darkseekers, and the dynamics between Neville and other survivors. These changes necessitated adjustments to set design, visual effects, and even the pacing of the film. Collaborative discussions between the director, writers, and Smith focused on striking a balance between action sequences, suspense, and introspective moments that explored loneliness, grief, and the human drive to survive. Lighting and cinematography were carefully orchestrated to enhance mood and narrative impact. The film's use of natural light, shadows, and atmospheric haze contributed to the sense of abandonment and tension. Particular attention was paid to the transition from day to night, as the Darkseekers were primarily nocturnal and the threat they posed was amplified by darkness. The cinematography required coordination with set designers, special effects teams, and stunt coordinators to ensure that each frame conveyed both danger and isolation. This careful orchestration of technical elements was critical in immersing audiences in Neville's world, allowing viewers to feel both the beauty and desolation of an empty city. Sound design was another intricate component of production. From the echoing footsteps in empty streets to the chilling growls of the Darkseekers, every auditory element was designed to heighten tension and immerse viewers in the environment. The sound team collaborated closely with the director to ensure that audio cues reinforced narrative beats, signaling both danger and emotional moments. This meticulous attention to sound created an auditory landscape that complemented the visual storytelling and amplified the film's suspenseful atmosphere. The editing process was equally demanding, with multiple versions of the film being tested and refined to achieve the desired pacing and emotional impact. Test screenings influenced adjustments to scenes, particularly in balancing moments of quiet reflection with sequences of intense action. Some changes involved trimming or rearranging scenes to maintain tension, while others enhanced the clarity of character motivations and relationships. These editorial decisions were vital in ensuring that audiences remained emotionally invested in Neville's journey throughout the film. In addition to the logistical and technical challenges, the production faced unforeseen hurdles, including weather disruptions and scheduling conflicts. Filming in New York exposed the crew to unpredictable conditions, from sudden rainstorms to extreme heat, requiring flexibility and rapid problem-solving. The dedication of the cast and crew, along with the director's clear vision, allowed the team to overcome these obstacles while maintaining the integrity of the film's aesthetic and narrative goals. I Am Legend presents a narrative that combines elements of science fiction, horror, and drama, unfolding in a way that maintains tension while exploring profound emotional themes. The story follows Dr. Robert Neville, a brilliant virologist, as he navigates a post-apocalyptic New York City years after a man-made virus has decimated humanity. From the opening scenes, the narrative establishes a stark contrast between the vibrant city life of the past and the eerie, desolate environment that Neville now inhabits. The plot immediately situates the audience in Neville's isolation, highlighting both his resourcefulness and the psychological toll of being the apparent last human survivor. This framing creates a deeply immersive experience, allowing viewers to understand the stakes of survival while building a foundation for character-driven storytelling. The film opens with a series of flashbacks interwoven with the present, showing the progression from a bustling New York City to its collapse under the viral outbreak. These flashbacks are crucial in establishing context. The virus originated as a genetically engineered cure for cancer, intended to be a scientific breakthrough, but ultimately mutates into a deadly pathogen. The contrast between the hope of scientific progress and the catastrophic consequences of unintended consequences sets the thematic tone for the film. This opening structure also immediately raises moral and ethical questions about science, responsibility, and humanity's role in shaping its own destiny. By revealing the backstory gradually, the narrative keeps viewers engaged, maintaining suspense while deepening their understanding of Neville's personal stakes. Once the present-day storyline begins, the narrative follows a largely linear structure, chronicling Neville's daily routines, experiments, and survival strategies. These sequences establish the rhythm of his life and underscore his isolation. Viewers witness Neville scavenging for supplies, securing his home, and meticulously monitoring the city for signs of life. The incorporation of a loyal canine companion, Sam, serves as both a narrative and emotional anchor, illustrating Neville's need for companionship and reinforcing the humanizing aspects of his character. The pacing during these segments is deliberate, emphasizing monotony and solitude while creating tension through the anticipation of potential threats. These quieter moments are essential as they heighten the impact of later action sequences and provide insight into Neville's psychological state. A central narrative thread revolves around Neville's scientific efforts to develop a cure using his own immunity as a basis for experimentation. These efforts are interspersed with encounters that gradually escalate the stakes. The introduction of Anna, a survivor who has also escaped the outbreak, provides a turning point in the narrative, challenging Neville's entrenched solitude and forcing him to reconsider his understanding of human connection and hope. Their interactions are carefully structured to reveal character development, with dialogue and actions illustrating trust, caution, and eventual collaboration. Anna's arrival shifts the narrative from a solitary survival story to a more dynamic exploration of human relationships under extreme conditions, adding complexity and emotional depth to the plot. The presence of the Darkseekers, infected humans who are highly sensitive to sunlight and exhibit aggressive behavior, forms the primary external conflict of the story. Their role in the narrative is carefully paced, with suspense building gradually as Neville encounters evidence of their activity before direct confrontations occur. This structure allows the film to balance psychological tension with action, ensuring that threats feel imminent, yet not overwhelming. The Darkseekers are more than mere antagonists. They serve as a mirror for the consequences of human error and the fragility of civilization, reinforcing the film's thematic concerns about the dangers of unchecked scientific ambition. The plot reaches a critical turning point when Neville's experimentation appears to yield promising results. This narrative shift is accompanied by increased tension as the Darkseekers become more organized and formidable. The film effectively uses pacing and structure to create a sense of impending danger while maintaining the emotional resonance of Neville's work. Moments of quiet scientific triumph are juxtaposed with high-stakes survival sequences, highlighting the duality of hope and peril in Neville's world. These narrative choices ensure that audiences remain engaged, experiencing both the intellectual satisfaction of scientific discovery and the visceral thrill of survival against relentless threats. The climax of I Am Legend is carefully orchestrated to provide both action and thematic resolution. Neville discovers that the Darkseekers are capable of emotional attachment and social organization, complicating the previously clear distinction between human and monster. This realization occurs during a high-intensity sequence where Neville risks his life to save Anna and her group, culminating in his confrontation with the Alpha Darkseeker. The narrative structure ensures that this climax is both suspenseful and meaningful, offering insight into the consequences of isolation, the ethical dimensions of his experiments, and the resilience of human connection. The climax also functions as a moral pivot, challenging the audience to reconsider the nature of survival, empathy, and the definition of humanity in extreme circumstances. Following the climax, the film's resolution diverges from traditional action conclusions by emphasizing thematic closure rather than purely physical survival. Depending on the version, the ending either highlights Neville's ultimate sacrifice for the preservation of a potential cure or offers a more hopeful note with his survival and continued collaboration with Anna. This narrative choice underscores the film's commitment to exploring emotional and ethical dimensions alongside action-driven plotlines. By prioritizing character development and thematic resonance in the resolution, the filmmakers provide audiences with a more reflective and thought-provoking conclusion, reinforcing the story's impact beyond the immediate spectacle of survival. Structurally, I Am Legend employs a combination of linear progression, flashbacks, and strategic pacing to maintain tension and engagement throughout its runtime. The narrative is meticulously balanced between introspective sequences that examine Neville's emotional state and action-oriented sequences that escalate the external threat. This dual focus ensures that the film functions on both psychological and visceral levels, offering audiences a compelling exploration of isolation, resilience, and the human capacity for hope. The interplay between character-driven storytelling and high-stakes suspense exemplifies a carefully crafted narrative architecture, allowing the film to transcend the typical boundaries of post-apocalyptic cinema. I Am Legend is more than a story of a man surviving in a desolate, post-apocalyptic city. It is a layered narrative rich with themes and symbolic elements that elevate it from a standard action suspense film to a thoughtful exploration of human nature, scientific ethics, and the essence of hope. The movie operates on multiple thematic levels, weaving personal struggles with broader social and philosophical commentary. Through its imagery, character arcs, and narrative decisions, the film invites viewers to engage with complex ideas about isolation, humanity's relationship with science, the nature of fear, and the possibility of redemption. One of the most prominent themes in the film is isolation and its psychological effects. Dr. Robert Neville's life in an empty New York City is marked by routine and survival, but beneath his daily activities lies a profound loneliness. The absence of human interaction is depicted not only through the physical emptiness of the streets, but also through Neville's attempts to fill the void, conversing with mannequins, listening to recorded broadcasts, and speaking to his dog, Sam, as though she were human. These actions are symbolic of humanity's deep-seated need for connection. Even in the face of total societal collapse, Neville instinctively seeks companionship, highlighting that human connection is as essential to survival as food or shelter. The film uses his isolation as a lens to explore the fragility of mental health when stripped of community, and the quiet moments of Neville's life carry as much weight as the explosive action sequences because they underscore the slow psychological toll of solitude. Another key theme is the unintended consequences of scientific ambition. The viral outbreak that leads to humanity's downfall originates from a genetically engineered cure for cancer, celebrated at its inception as a revolutionary breakthrough. This premise reflects real-world concerns about the double-edged nature of technological and scientific progress. The film does not vilify science itself, but rather presents a cautionary tale about overconfidence, ethical oversight, and the unpredictable nature of manipulating biology on a massive scale. Neville, as a scientist, embodies both the cause and the potential solution to the crisis. His work symbolizes the possibility of redemption through scientific dedication, even as it serves as a reminder of the hubris that contributed to the catastrophe. This duality reinforces the idea that scientific advancements must be balanced with humility, foresight, and ethical responsibility. The theme of hope and perseverance is woven throughout the narrative, serving as a counterbalance to the despair of the post-apocalyptic setting. Neville's tireless search for a cure, despite years of failure and the apparent loss of humanity, reflects an unwavering commitment to the idea that survival is possible. His routines, while practical, are also acts of defiance against hopelessness, a refusal to surrender to the inevitability of extinction. The arrival of Anna and Ethan revitalizes this theme, introducing the idea that hope can be shared and that the survival of the human spirit depends not just on one individual's resilience, but on collective perseverance. The film suggests that hope is not merely an abstract concept, but a driving force that shapes decisions, sustains purpose, and fuels the will to endure. Symbolism plays a significant role in reinforcing the film's themes. The setting of New York City, a place known for its constant movement and density of life, becomes a powerful symbol when rendered empty. The abandoned landmarks, overgrown streets, and silent skyscrapers stand as visual metaphors for the fragility of human civilization. These spaces, once teeming with activity, now serve as reminders of how quickly societal structures can collapse and how nature reclaims what is left behind. This visual motif of nature reclaiming the city symbolizes both the resilience of the natural world and the transitory nature of human dominance. The character of Sam, Neville's dog, functions as a living symbol of loyalty, emotional connection, and the last link to Neville's life before the outbreak. Sam's presence humanizes Neville, revealing his capacity for love, care, and vulnerability. Her eventual fate marks a turning point in the story, symbolizing the final severing of Neville's ties to the past and deepening his emotional isolation. Sam is not simply a pet in the narrative, but a representation of trust, companionship, and the last remnant of normalcy in Neville's life. Her loss serves as a catalyst for his subsequent choices, intensifying both his desperation and his determination. The Darkseekers carry symbolic weight beyond their role as physical antagonists. On one level, they represent the consequences of human error, the embodiment of a failed experiment turned uncontrollable threat. On another level, they challenge the clear moral boundary between human and monster. The revelation that they are capable of emotional bonds and organized behavior complicates Neville's perception of them, forcing a reconsideration of what defines humanity. This complexity invites viewers to reflect on themes of empathy, otherness, and the dangers of dehumanizing those who are different. Light and darkness function as recurring symbolic elements throughout the film. Daytime offers safety, freedom of movement, and visibility, while night is synonymous with danger, fear, and the unknown. This dichotomy reflects the larger struggle between hope and despair, knowledge and ignorance, life and death. Neville's careful adherence to daylight hours symbolizes his commitment to order and survival, while the encroaching darkness serves as a constant reminder of the precariousness of his existence. The use of light is not only practical but also metaphorical, underscoring the fragility of security in a world where danger lurks just beyond the horizon. Religious and spiritual undertones also surface in the film's thematic fabric. Anna's belief in divine guidance contrasts with Neville's pragmatic, science-driven worldview, creating a thematic dialogue between faith and reason. Her conviction that they are destined to find survivors and a safe haven introduces the possibility that survival is not solely a product of human effort, but may also be influenced by fate or higher purpose. This tension between belief systems enriches the narrative, inviting viewers to consider whether meaning in life is derived from empirical knowledge, spiritual conviction, or a combination of both. Finally, the concept of legacy and sacrifice permeates the story's resolution. Whether Neville survives or perishes depends on the version of the film, but in both interpretations, his actions are defined by the desire to ensure that humanity has a chance to rebuild. His research, his protection of Anna and Ethan, and his willingness to face overwhelming danger all speak to a legacy rooted in selflessness. This emphasis on sacrifice ties back to the central question of what it means to be legendary. In the context of the film, legend is not about fame or recognition, but about leaving behind something that sustains life and hope for others. The visual style of I Am Legend is one of its most defining qualities, setting it apart from other post-apocalyptic films of its time. Director Francis Lawrence, alongside cinematographer Andrew Lesnie, crafted a distinct visual language that immerses viewers in a hauntingly beautiful yet unsettling world. Every shot, lighting choice, and framing decision serves to reinforce the film's themes of isolation, resilience, and the fragile coexistence of life and decay. From the sprawling emptiness of New York City's abandoned streets to the intimate, dimly lit interiors where Neville seeks refuge, the film's visual design blends realism with stylized elements to create an atmosphere that is both believable and cinematic. One of the film's most striking visual achievements is its portrayal of an empty Manhattan. The sheer scale of the depopulated cityscape, with cars rusting in place, vegetation reclaiming sidewalks, and iconic landmarks standing in eerie silence, is central to the film's atmosphere. Achieving this effect required a combination of on-location shooting, practical set dressing, and extensive digital manipulation. Scenes were filmed on actual streets in New York, which were shut down temporarily for production, then digitally altered to remove signs of life. Computer-generated imagery was used to add details like overgrown plants, broken infrastructure, and wildlife roaming through urban spaces. This careful layering of physical and digital elements results in an environment that feels authentically abandoned yet visually heightened, making the audience feel as if they are walking beside Neville through a city that has become both a graveyard and a wilderness. Lighting plays a crucial role in shaping the film's mood and narrative tension. During daylight scenes, the city is bathed in a pale, almost washed-out light that underscores the emptiness and desolation of Neville's world. The sunlit exteriors often have a slightly desaturated color palette, emphasizing the absence of human vibrancy while allowing the greens of overgrown vegetation to stand out, symbolizing nature's reclamation. In stark contrast, nighttime scenes are dominated by deep shadows, with limited and directional light sources that heighten suspense and fear. Darkness in I Am Legend is not merely the absence of light, but a tangible presence, representing the domain of the dark seekers. The filmmakers use this visual dichotomy to reinforce the central conflict between safety and danger, order and chaos, hope and despair. Color grading and palette choices also contribute significantly to the film's visual identity. The overall palette tends toward muted tones, grays, browns, and greens, with occasional bursts of more vivid color to draw attention to key narrative elements. For example, Neville's laboratory space contains warmer lighting and more concentrated color, symbolizing a pocket of human order and scientific purpose within a chaotic world. Similarly, moments that involve memories or flashbacks to the pre-outbreak world are rendered with richer, more saturated colors, contrasting sharply with the muted present and highlighting the emotional and thematic gulf between past and present. The camera work in I Am Legend is deliberate and varied, adapting to the needs of each scene. Wide establishing shots are used extensively to convey the scope of the city's abandonment, often placing Neville as a small figure dwarfed by towering buildings and empty streets. These shots not only establish setting but also visually reinforce his isolation. In contrast, tighter close-ups and medium shots dominate emotional moments, drawing the viewer into Neville's personal experience and allowing them to register subtle expressions and micro-reactions. This alternation between expansive and intimate framing mirrors the film's balance between external spectacle and internal character study. Movement within the frame and camera dynamics also enhance the storytelling. Tracking shots follow Neville as he navigates the city, emphasizing the physicality of his survival routines while also immersing viewers in his perspective. Handheld camera work is sparingly employed during moments of heightened tension or chaos, such as confrontations with dark seekers, to create a sense of immediacy and instability. In quieter moments, the camera often remains steady, allowing the desolate environment to speak for itself and giving space for the weight of solitude to settle in. This controlled approach ensures that every shot serves the dual purpose of narrative clarity and emotional resonance. Special effects integration is another pillar of the film's visual style. The Dark Seekers are brought to life through a combination of motion capture performances and digital animation. While their design and execution received mixed reactions, their visual integration into the physical environment maintains a consistent aesthetic. They are typically shown in dimly lit or high-contrast conditions, which helps blend the digital elements with the live-action footage. The decision to keep the creatures partially obscured in many scenes enhances their menace and leaves room for the audience's imagination to amplify the threat. Symbolic visual motifs recur throughout the film, adding layers of meaning to its imagery. The repeated use of empty spaces, whether vast cityscapes or small, enclosed rooms, serves as a constant reminder of absence and loss. Wildlife, such as deer running through streets or birds flying over abandoned buildings, appears periodically as a symbol of nature's resilience and the continuity of life beyond human presence. Windows, doorways, and other transitional spaces are often used in framing to suggest the boundary between safety and danger, light and darkness, or the known and the unknown. These visual motifs not only add aesthetic richness, but also deepen the thematic connections between the film's narrative elements. The film's visual pacing mirrors its narrative rhythm. Early sequences often linger on the details of Neville's routines and environment, giving the audience time to absorb the visual world and its emptiness. As the story progresses and tension mounts, the editing becomes more rapid, with quicker cuts and more dynamic shot transitions during action scenes. This shift in visual tempo parallels the escalation of danger and the narrowing of Neville's options, subtly guiding the audience's emotional response. In its entirety, the visual style of I Am Legend functions as more than just a backdrop. It is an active participant in the storytelling. The cinematography, color design, lighting, and special effects work together to create a world that feels at once alien and familiar, beautiful and terrifying. The desolate New York is not simply a setting but a character in its own right, silent, unyielding, and constantly reminding Neville and the audience of what has been lost. By combining large-scale visual spectacle with intimate, character-focused framing, the film achieves a balance that allows viewers to feel both the grandeur of the apocalypse and the intimacy of personal survival. This layered visual approach ensures that I Am Legend is remembered not just for its plot or performances, but for the haunting and meticulously crafted imagery that defines its world. The soundtrack and sound design of I Am Legend play an essential role in shaping the film's atmosphere, emotional tone, and narrative rhythm. While the visuals establish the world's look and scale, it is the soundscape that gives that world a tangible sense of presence and emotional weight. From the haunting silence of deserted city streets to the subtle hum of background noise and the sudden bursts of chaos, the audio elements are meticulously crafted to immerse the audience in Dr. Robert Neville's experience of isolation, danger, and fleeting hope. The score was composed by James Newton Howard, a veteran film composer known for his ability to create emotionally resonant and thematically layered soundtracks. His approach to I Am Legend avoids excessive orchestral bombast, instead favoring a restrained, atmospheric sound palette that mirrors the film's dual focus on suspense and introspection. Howard uses sparse piano motifs, sustained strings, and gentle electronic textures to underscore Neville's solitude and the melancholy of a world emptied of human life. These quieter passages provide an intimate counterpoint to the louder, more percussive moments that accompany action or danger. The contrast between these two modes, gentle and contemplative versus sharp and intense, mirrors the film's pacing and emotional beats, guiding the audience through transitions between calm reflection and high-stakes survival. One of the defining aspects of the sound design is its use of silence or near silence as a narrative tool. In many scenes, particularly those set during Neville's daylight explorations, the absence of typical urban noise is palpable. Without the constant hum of traffic, voices, and construction that define New York City, the environment feels unnervingly hollow. This deliberate use of quiet reinforces the theme of isolation and forces the audience to become acutely aware of small sounds, a gust of wind, the creak of a door, or the distant rustle of leaves. These subtle auditory cues heighten tension by making the world feel both vast and intimate, where any sound could signify danger or discovery. The audio design for the Darkseekers is a key contributor to the film's horror and suspense elements. Their presence is often announced before they are seen, through a combination of guttural roars, distorted screams, and rapid, animal-like breathing. Sound designers layered human and animal recordings, then digitally manipulated them to create a sense of something almost familiar yet undeniably alien. This unsettling hybrid of recognizable and unnatural sounds taps into a primal discomfort in the listener, making the Darkseekers feel more threatening than purely visual effects could achieve. The directional use of these sounds in the surround mix, coming suddenly from off-screen or shifting from left to right, creates a sense of encirclement, amplifying the audience's anxiety during confrontation scenes. Environmental sound is also critical to the film's immersive quality. Even in the absence of human activity, the world of I Am Legend is not silent. It breathes with the sounds of nature reclaiming the city. The calls of distant birds, the splash of water in a deserted fountain, and the rustle of wind through vegetation are layered carefully to create a soundscape that is both peaceful and ominous. Wildlife sounds are used not just as background detail but as narrative indicators, moments when deer or other animals are heard before being seen, reminding both Neville and the audience that life, in some form, persists. This layering of natural sound underscores the theme of nature's resilience, while also heightening awareness of Neville's solitude as the only human voice in the environment. Inside Neville's fortified home, the sound design shifts to convey safety and control. The hum of electrical equipment, the quiet beeping of monitoring devices, and the soft playback of recorded news broadcasts create an auditory cocoon that contrasts with the hostile world outside. When these familiar sounds are interrupted by a sudden crash, a muffled roar, or the shattering of glass, the disruption is all the more jarring because it violates the sense of order and refuge Neville has worked so hard to maintain. This interplay between safe and unsafe spaces is reinforced entirely through sound cues, ensuring that the audience feels the same shifts in tension that Neville experiences. Howard's score is used sparingly during action sequences, allowing sound effects to dominate and maintain a sense of realism. In these moments, the emphasis is placed on diegetic sounds, the echo of Neville's footsteps in an empty hallway, the sharp report of his rifle, or the brittle snap of breaking glass. These sounds are mixed with precision, ensuring clarity and impact without overwhelming the listener. The absence of continuous background music in these scenes heightens immediacy and keeps the audience grounded in the moment, rather than distancing them with overly stylized scoring. When music does accompany moments of action or high drama, it often builds gradually, starting with low, sustained tones and swelling into fuller orchestration. This approach allows the tension to rise organically, mirroring Neville's escalating stress and urgency. In contrast, moments of grief or introspection are scored with minimalist arrangements, often relying on a single instrument to convey vulnerability. For example, scenes involving Sam are accompanied by delicate, almost fragile piano lines, emphasizing the emotional significance of their relationship. Sound also plays a symbolic role in I Am Legend. Neville's recorded daily radio broadcasts, calling out to any other survivors, are an auditory embodiment of hope. The repetition of these messages creates a motif that resonates throughout the film, each playback carrying the weight of days gone by without a response. This motif also serves as a reminder that sound, in Neville's world, is not only a tool for communication but also an act of faith, sending his voice into the void with the belief that someone, somewhere, might hear it. The use of diegetic music, songs that exist within the world of the film, is another subtle but effective element. Neville plays music to fill the silence of his home, and these moments add texture to his character, revealing his need for normalcy and comfort through familiar sounds. This choice humanizes him further, showing that even in the most extreme isolation, art and music remain vital to the human spirit. In the final analysis, the soundtrack and sound design of I Am Legend are inseparable from its narrative impact. They create a sonic environment that is as carefully constructed as its visual counterpart, blending silence, environmental detail, creature design, and restrained scoring to immerse the audience in a world of contrasts, emptiness and life, safety and danger, despair and hope. By treating sound as both a practical storytelling device and a thematic element, the filmmakers ensure that the auditory experience lingers in the mind as much as the haunting images, making the film a truly multisensory exploration of survival and resilience. When I Am Legend was released in December 2007, it arrived with considerable anticipation. The concept of a lone survivor in a depopulated New York, combined with Will Smith's star power and a December release date, positioned the film as both a commercial blockbuster and an awards contender. The marketing campaign had been extensive, featuring evocative images of an empty Times Square and a solitary man with a rifle. Audiences and critics approached the film with high expectations, and its reception was both commercially impressive and critically mixed, generating significant discussion about its strengths and weaknesses. From a financial standpoint, the film was an undeniable success. It debuted at number 1 at the U.S. box office, grossing over $77 million in its opening weekend, a December record at the time, and eventually earning more than $585 million worldwide. This made it one of the highest-grossing films of 2007 and a standout in Will Smith's career in terms of box office performance. The commercial triumph solidified Smith's status as one of the few actors who could reliably draw massive audiences to theaters, regardless of genre. Critically, the film received a spectrum of responses, ranging from enthusiastic praise for its atmosphere and lead performance to disappointment with its third act and creature design. Many reviewers highlighted Will Smith's performance as a career-defining turn. His ability to carry large portions of the film alone, often without dialogue, was widely commended. Critics noted that Smith brought emotional depth and vulnerability to Robert Neville, balancing the character's resilience with moments of raw despair. These qualities helped ground the film in human emotion despite its genre trappings. The visual realization of a deserted New York City was another element that drew consistent praise. Reviewers marveled at the technical achievement of transforming one of the busiest urban landscapes in the world into an eerie, overgrown ruin. The meticulous detail of the production design and visual effects impressed audiences and critics alike, lending the film a haunting realism that set it apart from other post-apocalyptic thrillers. However, one of the most debated aspects of the film was its portrayal of the infected Darkseekers. While some acknowledged the tension their presence created, many critics felt the computer-generated designs were unconvincing, especially in close-ups. The creatures' overly digital appearance, combined with their exaggerated movements, was cited as breaking immersion and reducing the horror factor. Several reviewers argued that a more practical or hybrid approach might have yielded a scarier and more believable result. The narrative structure also became a focal point of criticism, particularly the film's final act. While the first two-thirds of I Am Legend were praised for their methodical pacing, atmosphere, and exploration of Neville's isolation, the climax was seen by some as rushed and thematically inconsistent. The original theatrical ending, where Neville sacrifices himself to save Anna and Ethan, divided audiences. Some found it noble and emotionally satisfying, while others felt it undermined earlier thematic threads about the possibility of coexistence and understanding between humans and the infected. The later release of the alternate ending, which offered a more nuanced resolution, only intensified debates about which conclusion better served the story. Another area of mixed reception was the adaptation's faithfulness to Richard Matheson's 1954 novel. Purists of the source material were often disappointed by the film's deviation from the book's central twist and philosophical implications. In Matheson's original, Neville becomes a legendary figure to the infected, an inversion of the vampire mythos that reframes the story from their perspective. The 2007 film largely avoids this perspective shift, opting instead for a more conventional human versus monster narrative. This choice was criticized by some as a missed opportunity to explore deeper questions of morality, fear, and the definition of humanity. Audience reactions mirrored the critical divide. CinemaScore polls reported a generally positive rating, indicating that many moviegoers left satisfied, but online discussions revealed lingering frustration with certain creative choices. Some viewers embraced the film as a tense, emotionally engaging survival drama anchored by a strong central performance, while others dismissed it as a visually impressive but narratively compromised blockbuster. On the award circuit, I Am Legend did not achieve major recognition in the most prestigious categories, though it received several nominations for its visual effects, sound design, and Will Smith's performance from genre-specific and popular awards bodies. Its most notable accolades came from the Saturn Awards, which honor science fiction, fantasy, and horror films, where it garnered nominations for Best Science Fiction Film, Best Actor, and Best Special Effects. Controversy also arose in smaller circles regarding the film's thematic interpretation of the infected. Some critics and academics argued that the depiction of the Darkseekers as purely antagonistic reinforced simplistic, othering tropes in post-apocalyptic fiction. Others suggested that, when viewed through the lens of the alternate ending, the story gained more complexity and subverted this reading, but the theatrical cut's dominance in the public mind meant that such interpretations remained niche. The legacy of the reception is that I Am Legend occupies a curious space in cinematic memory. It is remembered fondly by many for its world-building, emotional impact, and Smith's performance, yet it is also often cited in discussions about films that failed to maintain the promise of their opening acts. This split reputation has arguably fueled ongoing interest in the property, as fans and critics alike continue to speculate about alternate versions, sequels, and reboots that might fulfill the story's early potential. Ultimately, the reception of I Am Legend reflects the challenges of balancing commercial expectations, source material fidelity, and creative vision in a high-profile adaptation. Its critical discourse remains active more than a decade later, not because it was universally beloved or universally panned, but because it struck a nerve, delivering moments of brilliance alongside choices that invited persistent debate. That combination ensured the film would remain a point of reference in conversations about science fiction cinema of the 2000s and about the risks and rewards of ambitious genre filmmaking. The legacy of I Am Legend is a layered and enduring one, shaped by its commercial success, the cultural conversations it sparked, and its continued presence in discussions about post-apocalyptic cinema. While it is not universally regarded as a flawless film, its influence can be traced through popular culture, later film projects, and the broader conversation about how science fiction stories are adapted for mainstream audiences. The movie occupies a unique space where its visual achievements, thematic potential, and commercial viability have made it both a point of admiration and a case study in missed opportunities. One of the most immediate and lasting impacts of I Am Legend is its contribution to the visual and tonal language of post-apocalyptic film in the 21st century. The imagery of a desolate, overgrown New York City, stripped of human activity, has become one of the defining visual motifs of the genre. This aesthetic, blending ruin with beauty, has influenced numerous films, television series, and video games. Titles such as The Last of Us, The Walking Dead, and Oblivion have employed similar visuals and atmospheric tones, often evoking the same balance of haunting emptiness and fragile survival that I Am Legend captured so vividly. Even outside the entertainment industry, the film's stark cityscapes have been referenced in advertising and photography projects exploring themes of abandonment and urban decay. Its influence extended beyond aesthetics. The film's narrative focus on a single, isolated protagonist navigating both physical danger and crushing loneliness inspired other stories that prioritize character study over spectacle in survival settings. The success of a film carried almost entirely by one actor, Will Smith's Robert Neville, proved that audiences could remain engaged in a story with minimal interpersonal interaction if the emotional core was strong. This, in turn, emboldened creators in both film and television to experiment with slower-paced, character-driven survival tales that still fit within commercially viable genres. The movie also left its mark in the cultural imagination through memorable lines, imagery, and concepts that have been referenced or parodied across various media. The haunting shots of Times Square devoid of life, Neville's recorded radio broadcasts, and the intimate scenes with his dog Sam have been echoed in sketches, memes, and homages. In gaming communities, comparisons to I Am Legend are common whenever a piece of media features a lone survivor exploring abandoned urban environments. The film's core premise, humanity on the brink, nature reclaiming the earth, has become a shorthand for certain apocalyptic scenarios, much like Mad Max has for desert wastelands. On the industrial side, the film's box office performance proved that post-apocalyptic stories could be major commercial draws when paired with a bankable lead and high production values. Before I Am Legend, many such narratives were seen as niche or risky investments for studios, often relegated to mid-budget projects or genre-specific audiences. The movie's financial success demonstrated that the genre could attract mainstream global audiences, paving the way for larger-budget apocalyptic and dystopian projects in the years that followed. The debates surrounding its ending, particularly the difference between the theatrical version and the alternate ending, also contributed to its lasting influence. These discussions helped fuel the growing recognition of alternate cuts and directors' versions as legitimate areas of audience interest. The film became a prominent example in conversations about how studio mandates and test audience feedback can shape or reshape a movie's thematic direction. This awareness fed into larger conversations about creative control in Hollywood, influencing the way audiences approached other films with known alternate versions. In terms of direct continuations, the influence of I Am Legend has lingered through its persistent presence in sequel and reboot rumors. Over the years, the property has repeatedly been floated for follow-ups, with discussions ranging from prequels exploring the early days of the outbreak to reimaginings that would more closely follow Richard Matheson's original novel. The enduring interest in these projects, even more than a decade later, underscores the staying power of the film's core concept. It has the rare combination of name recognition, thematic depth, and visual appeal that keeps studios returning to it as a potential franchise anchor. The film's approach to the infected also left a mark, though not without controversy. While the all-CGI Darkseekers received mixed reviews at the time, the choice to portray them as hyper-agile, savage creatures influenced depictions of infected or mutated antagonists in other works. Video games like Days Gone and movies such as World War Z feature similarly relentless, fast-moving hordes, demonstrating that, even with criticisms, I Am Legend's creature design left an impression on how post-apocalyptic threats could be visualized. Academically, the movie is often discussed in the context of adaptation theory, serving as an example of how source material can be transformed, sometimes radically, for modern audiences. Scholars and film analysts have used it to explore questions about fidelity to original works, audience expectations for genre storytelling, and the tension between commercial imperatives and artistic ambition. These discussions keep the film relevant in film studies courses and critical essays, cementing its place not just in popular culture, but in academic discourse. The legacy of I Am Legend also intersects with real-world events in a way that has given it renewed relevance. In the wake of global crises, particularly the COVID-19 pandemic, images from the film resurfaced online as people drew parallels between its empty streets and real-life lockdowns. This unintentional echo of the film's imagery into lived experience gave it a second life in public consciousness, with memes, tweets, and commentary revisiting its themes of isolation, survival, and the fragility of societal structures. In the end, the influence of I Am Legend is not tied solely to its execution as a single film but to the resonance of its ideas, its aesthetic achievements, and its central performance. It left an imprint on how post-apocalyptic worlds are imagined in visual media, proved the commercial viability of large-scale survival stories, and became a touchpoint in ongoing debates about adaptation, endings, and the balance between spectacle and substance. Whether discussed with admiration, frustration, or curiosity, it continues to inspire conversations, and that in itself is the mark of a work that has secured its place in the cinematic landscape. When I Am Legend arrived in theaters in December 2007, it was more than just another high-profile holiday release. It became an experience that lingered in the minds of its audience long after the credits rolled. The film's mix of action, suspense, and emotional resonance meant that people connected to it on multiple levels, each viewer bringing their own perspective to its themes, imagery, and characters. While critics tended to analyze its technical and narrative strengths and weaknesses, everyday viewers often engaged with it in more personal, emotional, and even philosophical ways. These audience reactions varied across age groups, cultural backgrounds, and even personal life experiences, which helped give the movie a kind of layered reception that extended far beyond its box office performance. One of the most common reflections from audiences centered on the emotional weight of isolation. Will Smith's portrayal of Robert Neville, a man entirely cut off from other human beings for years, resonated deeply with viewers, especially those who had themselves experienced periods of loneliness or separation. Many remarked that the scenes of Neville speaking to mannequins, setting up daily routines, and clinging to a sense of normalcy felt disturbingly real. These moments prompted discussions not only about physical survival in an apocalyptic scenario, but also about the human need for connection and how easily the mind can begin to fray without it. The relationship between Neville and his dog, Sam, became the film's emotional heartbeat for many viewers. Audiences frequently singled out their bond as the part of the movie they remembered most vividly. The companionship between man and animal was interpreted by some as a stand-in for the last thread of humanity Neville had left, and Sam's tragic fate was widely considered one of the most heartbreaking moments in mainstream cinema of the 2000s. For many, that scene overshadowed even the larger plot, becoming a cultural touchstone for pet owners and animal lovers who saw it as a symbolic loss of hope. It sparked online conversations, tributes, and even personal anecdotes from viewers about their own pets providing comfort in times of hardship. The film's themes of resilience and purpose also struck a chord. Some viewers interpreted Neville's meticulous routines, hunting deer, maintaining his home, conducting experiments on the infected, not just as survival tactics, but as an assertion of meaning in an otherwise meaningless world. Discussions in fan forums and blogs often framed Neville as a symbol of perseverance against despair, someone who keeps moving forward even when the odds are hopeless. This interpretation appealed to audiences who saw themselves reflected in that struggle, whether in the context of personal loss, societal challenges, or their own private battles. There was also a segment of the audience that engaged with the film on a more philosophical and even moral level, particularly in relation to the infected Darkseekers. While the theatrical version positioned them as monstrous antagonists, some viewers who later saw the alternate ending found their perspective altered. In that version, the infected are shown as having their own relationships, emotions, and capacity for reasoning, suggesting that Neville himself might be the villain in their eyes. This shift prompted a reevaluation of the story's core message among fans, leading to discussions about empathy, fear of the other, and how narratives change when we see them through another group's perspective. Generationally, the film resonated differently. For younger viewers, particularly teens and early 20-somethings, the movie was often seen as a gripping, emotional thrill ride with a relatable central hero who combined action movie capability with vulnerability. Many in this age group were introduced to Richard Matheson's original novel because of the movie, even if they later discovered how different the source material was. For older audiences, especially those with families, the story's themes of loss, responsibility, and the desire to protect others carried a different kind of weight. Parents, in particular, often related to Neville's protective instinct toward Sam and later toward the survivors he meets. Interestingly, some interpretations shifted over time, especially after real-world events began to mirror aspects of the film. During the COVID-19 pandemic, I Am Legend experienced a resurgence in public discussion. Viewers who revisited the film in 2020 and 2021 found new relevance in its depiction of deserted streets, reliance on routine to maintain sanity, and fear of infection spreading among a population. Memes comparing lockdown cities to the movie's vision of New York circulated widely, and some viewers claimed the film felt more unsettling and believable after living through their own experiences of isolation. Beyond personal resonance, the film also spurred speculative conversations among audiences about survival in similar scenarios. Online communities dedicated to prepping, survivalism, or even urban exploration used the movie as a jumping-off point for discussions about resource management, defensive tactics, and the psychological challenges of solitude. Neville's habits, such as stockpiling supplies, keeping multiple escape routes in mind, and marking dangerous zones, were sometimes analyzed as if they were instructional, with fans debating whether they would make similar or different choices in his position. The reception was not without its frustrations among viewers. Some audience members were left unsatisfied with the way the story wrapped up, feeling that the film's setup promised a deeper philosophical payoff than the theatrical ending delivered. In casual conversations, the complaint that the ending ruined it became a recurring refrain. This dissatisfaction, however, did not erase the connection many felt to the first two-thirds of the film, which they regarded as immersive, emotional, and hauntingly realistic. In fact, the divide between those who embraced the ending and those who rejected it became part of the movie's cultural footprint, keeping it alive in fan debates. Ultimately, the way I Am Legend was interpreted by audiences speaks to its layered construction. On the surface, it could be enjoyed as a tense action thriller anchored by a charismatic star, but beneath that, it offered avenues for personal reflection on grief, hope, connection, and survival. People brought their own experiences into the theater and found pieces of themselves reflected in Neville's story, whether in his loneliness, his love for his companion, his stubborn routines, or his moral dilemmas. That blend of spectacle and intimate humanity is what has allowed the film to maintain relevance, even for those who have not revisited it in years. It became not just a film to watch, but one to think about, talk about, and in some cases, feel a little differently about each time the world outside the theater changed. While I Am Legend unfolds against the backdrop of a devastated New York City and a near-extinction level pandemic, its core is deeply personal. The success of the film rests heavily on the strength and depth of its characters, especially Robert Neville, whose journey is both physical and psychological. The limited cast means that every character, human or otherwise, carries a disproportionate weight in shaping the emotional and thematic trajectory of the story. The movie doesn't rely on a large ensemble, but rather concentrates on a few pivotal figures whose arcs are tightly intertwined with the narrative's momentum. Robert Neville's arc is the film's spine. At the beginning, Neville is not merely a survivor. He is a man on a mission, holding onto a sense of purpose through scientific research to find a cure for the virus. His daily routines, hunting, gathering, sending out radio messages, and working in his laboratory, reveal a man who is disciplined, methodical, and determined. Yet beneath this controlled exterior lies profound loneliness and unprocessed grief. Flashbacks to the outbreak reveal his desperate attempt to save his wife and daughter, and the eventual loss of his family becomes the silent driving force behind his actions. Neville's arc is one of gradual emotional unmasking. At first, he appears stoic and even detached, but as the film progresses, the psychological strain of isolation becomes more visible. Conversations with mannequins, his tenderness toward Sam, and his growing frustration with failed experiments expose cracks in his emotional armor. Neville's relationship with Sam is essential to his character development. The German Shepherd is not just a pet. She is his confidant, his moral anchor, and the last living connection to the world before the collapse. Through Sam, audiences see Neville's capacity for care, empathy, and even joy. When Sam dies, it is more than a personal tragedy. It represents the shattering of Neville's emotional stability. In the aftermath, Neville's behavior becomes more reckless and self-destructive, leading him into situations that almost get him killed. This shift marks the beginning of his transformation from a man who survives for the sake of finding a cure to someone who questions whether survival is worth it at all. The introduction of Anna and Ethan near the film's climax serves as the final catalyst for Neville's arc. Anna represents hope in a tangible form, a reminder that there are still others out there and that the possibility of community still exists. Her presence challenges Neville's worldview. For years, he has operated under the assumption that he is alone, and that assumption has become part of his identity. Anna's arrival forces him to reframe his purpose. Is he living to find a cure for humanity, or has he been clinging to the cure as a way to give meaning to his own isolation? By the end, Neville's decision to sacrifice himself so that Anna and Ethan can escape with the cure shows a complete shift from individual survival to selfless action. In the alternate ending, where Neville survives and learns to see the infected as more than monsters, his arc takes a different direction, toward empathy and mutual recognition rather than martyrdom. Both versions, however, illustrate a man whose journey is defined by evolving perceptions of humanity and purpose. Sam's arc, while nonverbal, is equally significant. She begins as a constant presence, following Neville through his routines and providing silent companionship. Her loyalty is unwavering, and her trust in Neville mirrors his trust in her. Sam's bravery is evident when she defends Neville against infected dogs, ultimately leading to her fatal infection. This moment crystallizes her role in the story. She is the emotional tether that keeps Neville human. Her death is not just the loss of a companion but the severing of Neville's last emotional connection, triggering a descent into hopelessness. For the audience, Sam's arc is a masterclass in how non-human characters can have profound emotional weight in a story. Anna's arc, though brief compared to Neville's, is about bridging the gap between isolation and community. When she appears, she brings with her the knowledge of a survivor colony, representing a future Neville had stopped believing in. Initially, Anna's purpose is functional, helping Neville recover and urging him to escape, but as the story unfolds, she becomes the vessel for the continuation of Neville's work. Her faith in a higher plan and her belief that Neville's mission matters even after his death provide the film with its note of hope. For Anna, meeting Neville validates her journey and affirms that humanity's survival is not just about numbers, but about the ideals and sacrifices people are willing to make. Ethan, though a minor character, has symbolic significance. His presence reminds both Neville and the audience of innocence and the next generation that might inherit the world. The boy's quiet demeanor and trust in Anna contrast sharply with Neville's guarded nature. In a story dominated by fear and distrust, Ethan embodies the potential for a fresh start, unburdened by the traumas that shaped Neville. The infected Darkseekers, while not fully fleshed out as characters in the theatrical cut, still serve as a kind of collective antagonist that evolves in the audience's understanding. Initially, they are framed as mindless threats, feral, violent, and incapable of reason. However, the alternate ending reframes them entirely, revealing emotional complexity and social bonds. This twist reshapes their role from mere monsters to survivors of their own kind, adding depth to the conflict and challenging the simplistic hero-villain dynamic. In examining the arcs collectively, the film's character development is structured around the theme of transformation under extreme conditions. Neville begins as a man defined by survival and scientific purpose, but evolves, whether towards self-sacrifice in the theatrical ending or toward understanding and coexistence in the alternate one. Sam's unwavering loyalty, Anna's hopeful persistence, Ethan's quiet symbolism, and even the Darkseekers' reframed humanity contribute to a narrative in which every character's journey reinforces the central questions: what does it mean to survive, and what makes survival worth it? By keeping the character roster small, the film ensures that each arc feels impactful, with every interaction carrying narrative and emotional weight. The result is a survival story that, while filled with large-scale stakes, remains intimately focused on a handful of lives and how they change in the face of isolation, danger, and the possibility of redemption. In I Am Legend, the post-apocalyptic world is not built solely through dialogue or plot. It is made tangible through its visual environment, which is the combined work of costume design and set design. Together, these two aspects help create a believable, immersive version of a desolate New York City where nature has begun reclaiming the streets, humanity has all but vanished, and survival is the only daily goal. While the film employs advanced visual effects to achieve some of its grander shots, the believability of Robert Neville's life, his emotional state, and the world's decay rests heavily on the physicality of costumes and sets that the audience can see, feel, and almost smell through the screen. The costume design for Robert Neville is a study in practicality. Neville's wardrobe is consistent with someone who lives alone in a world stripped of society's luxuries. His primary look, durable cargo pants, well-worn t-shirts, layered jackets, and heavy boots, reflects not only his survivalist mindset, but also his need for functional clothing that can endure physical wear and harsh conditions. The muted colors of his clothing, mostly shades of gray, brown, and faded green, help him blend into the deteriorating environment and signal a world drained of the vibrant hues of civilization. His clothes show signs of long-term use, fraying seams, softened fabrics, and faint stains that would naturally accumulate over years without access to fresh clothing stores. These details ground Neville's appearance in reality and subtly convey the passage of time in his solitary existence. Sam's design, though minimal in terms of wardrobe, also plays into the film's visual storytelling. The German Shepherd wears a standard collar, which is both a functional necessity and an emotional relic. The collar is a visible reminder that she is not just a wild animal but a companion from the world before the collapse, a bridge to Neville's past life with his family. Its intact condition shows Neville's care and maintenance, underscoring her importance to him. When Anna and Ethan enter the story, their clothing choices offer an immediate visual contrast to Neville's. Anna's clothing is similarly practical but carries a slightly different texture and color palette, suggesting she has survived in different environments with different challenges. Her garments are looser, more layered, and less tailored than Neville's, giving the impression of someone constantly on the move, scavenging from varied sources. Ethan's clothes, slightly oversized for him, imply scarcity and improvisation, children in such a world where what is available, not what fits perfectly. These costume contrasts subtly communicate the differences in their survival experiences before they even speak much to one another. The set design is where I Am Legend truly immerses the viewer. The abandoned New York City streets are among the film's most striking visual achievements. While some shots rely on digital effects to remove people and vehicles, much of the grounding comes from physical set dressing. Cars are left haphazardly in intersections, overgrown weeds push through cracks in the pavement, and storefronts are covered in grime, dust, and makeshift barricades. Every corner of the environment is infused with the idea of sudden abandonment, coffee cups left on tables, newspapers blowing in the wind, billboards advertising now irrelevant products fading under the sun. Neville's home is one of the most important sets in the film, functioning as both a fortress and a personal sanctuary. From the outside, it is fortified with heavy metal shutters, locks, and lighting rigs meant to keep the Darkseekers at bay. Inside, however, it is meticulously organized, a reflection of Neville's need for order in a chaotic world. The kitchen is stocked with neatly arranged supplies. The living room houses entertainment options like books and DVDs, and the lab in the basement is sterile and clinical, filled with scientific equipment and caged test subjects. The juxtaposition of the warm living spaces and the cold, clinical laboratory mirrors Neville's dual roles as both a lonely man seeking comfort and a scientist driven by purpose. One particularly effective set piece is the video rental store. It is stocked with mannequins arranged as though they were real customers, allowing Neville to maintain a semblance of social interaction. This location is both humorous and deeply unsettling. The costumes on the mannequins, brightly colored, clean, and frozen in time, are a sharp contrast to the weathered, muted reality outside, highlighting the gap between the past and the present. The design of the infected Darkseeker layers also deserves attention. These environments are stripped of any remnants of human domestic life. They are dark, humid, and claustrophobic, with a kind of animalistic organization. In these spaces, set design communicates a shift from human civilization to a more primal, survival-based existence. The absence of personal items or decoration reinforces the idea that the infected have moved beyond the world Neville is still clinging to. Lighting plays a key role in complementing the sets, and although it overlaps with cinematography, it's integral to how the set design is perceived. Daylight sequences in the city are washed in natural tones that highlight decay and abandonment, while nighttime interiors rely on warm, contained lighting that makes Neville's home feel like a fragile bubble of safety. Outside at night, the sets are drenched in deep shadows and unsettling silences, turning familiar urban environments into alien landscapes. The set dressers and costume department also took great care to ensure consistency and authenticity. For instance, Neville's home shows signs of ongoing maintenance: clean floors, functioning electronics, carefully stored gear, which matches his personality as someone who clings to order. In contrast, the streets are marked by progressive entropy. Plants grow thicker, debris piles higher, and nature's slow reclamation becomes more evident as the film progresses. By carefully balancing functionality with visual storytelling, the costume and set design in I Am Legend manage to serve two roles at once. They make the world feel lived in and authentic, and they reveal aspects of the characters without requiring explicit exposition. Neville's carefully maintained clothes, Sam's intact collar, Anna's road-worn garments, and the precise organization of the home all speak volumes about these characters' histories, values, and strategies for survival. The world they inhabit, at once familiar and alien, supports the story's tone of loss, resilience, and adaptation. The marketing campaign for I Am Legend in 2007 was one of the most notable examples of how a big-budget, high-concept film can be sold not only through traditional methods, but also by creating an immersive experience for audiences before they ever stepped into the theater. The film had a unique advantage. Its premise of a desolate New York City and a lone man surviving amid a viral apocalypse lent itself to striking visual advertising and curiosity-driven promotion. Warner Brothers, along with its promotional partners, leaned heavily into creating both spectacle and mystery, building anticipation for months before release. The campaign began in earnest with the release of the teaser trailer, which was deliberately light on plot details. Instead of revealing too much about the infected creatures or the larger story arc, the early marketing focused on Will Smith's character, Robert Neville, moving through an eerily empty Manhattan. Shots of iconic locations such as Times Square, Fifth Avenue, and the Brooklyn Bridge, completely devoid of people, were used to create a chilling and attention-grabbing hook. These images alone sparked online discussions and speculation, as such scenes had rarely been captured on film with this level of realism and scale. One of the most effective early pieces of marketing was the use of a giant billboard in New York City showing the Brooklyn Bridge in mid-collapse, an image taken from the film's flashback sequence. This massive visual became a talking point for both locals and tourists, serving as a reminder of the movie's premise and scale. Posters also carried the now iconic tagline, "The last man on Earth is not alone," a phrase designed to both intrigue and unsettle potential viewers by suggesting there was more lurking in Neville's world than the marketing was letting on. The studio leveraged Will Smith's star power heavily in the promotion. By 2007, Smith was one of the most bankable actors in the world, and his involvement was a major selling point. Interviews, press tours, and television appearances were organized to showcase Smith's dedication to the role, including discussions of his physical preparation and the challenges of acting opposite computer-generated creatures for much of the film. Smith's charisma and likability translated into strong publicity appearances, keeping the movie in the public conversation in the months leading up to release. The marketing team also embraced the emerging trend of viral campaigns and alternate reality games, ARGs. Websites were created to mimic official health and government advisories, offering fictional news bulletins and scientific updates about the Crippen virus, the fictional plague in the movie. These sites allowed visitors to dig deeper into the backstory of the outbreak, effectively expanding the film's universe beyond the runtime and creating an immersive pre-release experience. Fans could track the virus' fictional spread on interactive maps, read fake scientific journals, and follow the unfolding global crisis, as if it were happening in real time. Comic-Con 2007 played a key role in building hype among genre fans. Warner Brothers hosted exclusive footage screenings, Q&A sessions with the director and producers, and behind-the-scenes showcases that demonstrated how the empty New York City sequences were created. Early reactions from these events spread through online forums and blogs, further fueling anticipation. Television spots and online trailers were carefully timed for maximum reach. They aired during high-profile sporting events, popular TV series, and on major entertainment websites. Many of these spots avoided showing too much of the infected creatures, instead focusing on suspense and the sense of isolation. This decision not only maintained the mystery but also created a tonal consistency across all promotional material, emphasizing suspense over action in the lead-up to the release. International marketing tailored the campaign to fit different cultural audiences. In some regions, posters emphasized the action elements more heavily, showing Smith armed and ready for combat, while in others, the focus was on the haunting emptiness of the cityscape. The movie's global rollout included translated versions of the viral websites and region-specific press tours to maximize appeal in key overseas markets. Merchandising was relatively restrained compared to blockbuster franchises, but select tie-ins were created. Graphic novels and special edition DVD re-releases of earlier adaptations of Richard Matheson's I Am Legend were marketed alongside the film to capitalize on renewed interest in the story. Collectible posters, limited edition prints of key concept art, and promotional clothing items were made available at special screenings and online contests. The timing of the release was also strategic. December 2007 positioned I Am Legend as both a holiday blockbuster and a potential awards contender, appealing to audiences seeking spectacle as well as those drawn to the prestige of high-profile year-end releases. The juxtaposition of a large-scale, effects-driven science fiction thriller with an emotionally intimate story proved to be a successful marketing angle. Ultimately, the marketing campaign for I Am Legend combined high-visibility visuals, star-driven publicity, immersive viral storytelling, and selective mystery to create a sense of event around the film. By the time it opened, audiences had been primed with months of striking imagery and carefully measured information, ensuring that curiosity and hype translated into a strong box office debut. The campaign demonstrated how blending traditional advertising with innovative digital engagement could maximize the cultural footprint of a film, a strategy that has since become increasingly common in blockbuster promotion. When comparing the 2007 adaptation of I Am Legend to earlier film versions, similar genre entries, and other works by its director, Francis Lawrence, it becomes clear that the movie occupies a unique position in the history of post-apocalyptic storytelling. While rooted in Richard Matheson's 1954 novel, it diverges in significant ways, both narratively and tonally, from previous interpretations and from many of its cinematic peers. This analysis will explore those differences, highlight its commonalities, and evaluate the choices that distinguish it. The earliest adaptation of Matheson's story was the 1964 film The Last Man on Earth, starring Vincent Price. This version retained much of the novel's atmosphere of isolation and more closely adhered to the book's ending, which reveals the protagonist as a feared figure among the infected, effectively a legend to them. Its low-budget aesthetic and black-and-white presentation created a stark, eerie tone that worked well for its era. In contrast, the 2007 film traded that minimalist, claustrophobic feel for grand scale and Hollywood polish, using advanced visual effects to depict a sprawling, abandoned New York City. The Will Smith version is less about a philosophical twist and more about emotional resilience, survival, and redemption, appealing to a broader mainstream audience. The second adaptation, 1970's The Omega Man starring Charlton Heston, took greater liberties with the source material. Set during a time of Cold War tension, it replaced the viral outbreak with biological warfare, and the infected became an albino, cult-like group of survivors rather than vampiric creatures. This film embraced a more action-oriented approach, reflecting the social anxieties of the 1970s while also leaning into a rugged, macho hero archetype. Compared to The Omega Man, The 2007 I Am Legend offers a more personal and emotionally layered central character, with Neville portrayed as a man defined by grief and determination rather than sheer bravado. Thematically, the 2007 film's ending is one of its biggest divergences from both the novel and previous films. The original novel's conclusion reframed Neville's role entirely, showing him as a monster in the eyes of the new society of infected beings, thus turning the title into a commentary on perspective and the cyclical nature of fear. The Will Smith version replaced this with a more straightforward, heroic sacrifice, where Neville becomes a legend to humanity for his cure rather than a legend to the infected for his destruction of them. This shift made the story more in line with traditional Hollywood heroism, though an alternate ending closer to the novel was filmed and later released, pleasing fans of Matheson's darker resolution. Comparing I Am Legend to similar post-apocalyptic films like 28 Days Later, 2002, reveals a shared use of empty urban landscapes and an emphasis on isolation, but with notable differences in pacing and tone. 28 Days Later presents a grittier, lower-budget aesthetic with handheld camera work and a heightened sense of chaos. I Am Legend, on the other hand, employs smoother cinematography, a larger effects budget, and a polished visual style that showcases the spectacle of a deserted metropolis. Where 28 Days Later thrives on raw immediacy and horror, I Am Legend aims for a balance between action spectacle and meditative loneliness. In terms of creature design, the infected in I Am Legend bear similarities to the rage zombies of 28 Days Later and the vampiric mutants of earlier adaptations, but here they are entirely computer-generated. This was a bold but controversial choice. Some audiences and critics found the digital effects diminished the realism compared to practical makeup effects, while others appreciated the enhanced agility and speed that CGI allowed. Earlier versions like The Last Man on Earth relied on human actors and makeup, creating a slower, more menacing threat, while the Omega Man went for stylized antagonists with human intelligence. Looking at Francis Lawrence's other works, particularly Constantine, 2005, and The Hunger Games, Catching Fire, 2013, it's clear that I Am Legend fits into his broader tendency to blend spectacle with introspective character beats. Lawrence often balances large-scale world-building with moments of intimacy, focusing on the protagonist's internal struggles even when surrounded by visually overwhelming settings. In I Am Legend, Neville's quiet moments in his home, speaking to mannequins or cooking dinner for Sam, mirror the kind of human grounding Lawrence would later bring to Katniss Everdeen's journey amid political upheaval. The film also stands alongside other Last Survivor stories such as The Road, 2009, and Children of Men, 2006, both of which take a more somber, grounded approach. Compared to these, I Am Legend is more accessible to mainstream audiences due to its pacing, higher action quotient, and star-driven marketing. However, it shares with them the exploration of hope, human connection, and the fragility of civilization. When examining its place in the broader post-apocalyptic genre, I Am Legend can be seen as a bridge between the more introspective survival dramas of earlier decades and the modern blockbuster approach to end-of-the-world scenarios. It combines big-budget spectacle, digital effects, and a bankable lead actor with the thematic DNA of its literary origin. This blending of tones has led to its lasting presence in popular culture, despite some debate among fans about whether it sacrificed thematic depth for mass appeal. Ultimately, the 2007 I Am Legend differentiates itself from earlier adaptations by updating the setting, relying heavily on visual effects, and reinterpreting the ending to suit contemporary audience expectations. While purists may favor the more faithful or philosophically complex versions, this adaptation succeeds in its own right by delivering a visually striking, emotionally engaging story that introduced Matheson's core ideas to an entirely new generation. In doing so, it both honors and reimagines the legacy of a narrative that has been revisited and reinterpreted for over half a century.